So the interim government of Bangladesh being sworn in today after weeks of political crisis in the country, something that has acquired a great deal of interest in India and across the world. Of course, the Nobel Prize winning economist Muhammad Yunus to be the chief advisor of the interim government. We now have joining us a very senior diplomat from Bangladesh, Shamsher Chowdhury, to discuss what's been happening in Bangladesh, what is the path forward for this new interim government and for the country at large. Ambassador Chowdhury, thank you so much for joining us. Could you begin by telling us what the significance is of the swearing in of the interim government? What are the big challenges facing this government that is now helmed by Muhammad Yunus?
Thank you very much. To begin with, I offer my very sincere congratulations to Nobel Peace Prize winner Professor Muhammad Yunus to have taken over or have been sworn in as the chief advisor of the interim government of Bangladesh. He enjoys reputation globally. He's very much liked and admired in Bangladesh. Unfortunately, he has been subjected to a lot of harassment over the last couple of years, and we don't know what is the legality of the cases that were brought against him. Fact remains that he has been harassed. I mean, he's a Nobel laureate, but I don't think he was honored by the government the way he should have been. But I congratulate him. It's a historical moment that a Nobel Peace Prize winner has been sworn in as the head of a government in Bangladesh, and maybe an interim government, but it's a government. The second question is there's still no clarity about a couple of very critical and crucial things. What is going to be the length of this interim government? Under our existing constitution, once elections are announced, the existing government in the parliament acts as a caretaker government, but not for more than 90 days, at least 3 months. So will there be a special provision to declare this interim government or to give this interim government a longer life, say a year to 2 years? Right. Because one thing I must add, that Bangladesh does need major reforms in its administrative system, in its governance system. I personally feel that this existing practice of, first past the post actually is a distortion of the election results. First of all, there has to be free and fair election results. And a free and fair election result in Bangladesh, as experience shows, has been possible under a neutral non-party caretaker government. Once the non-party neutral caretaker government provision was removed from the constitution, we have seen elections that were not free, neither fair nor participatory in the real sense. So I think we have to go back to some kind of neutral non-party caretaker government during the election period, and they must conduct the election. That's one. Second thing, I think Bangladesh should also look at the possibility, I hope this government will take it seriously, to replace this first past the post system with a proportional representation system in the parliament, which is actually a much more accurate reflection of the people's verdict at an election time. They have that in Sri Lanka, they have that, I think, in Nepal. They have a number of countries in the world. In Europe, of course, most of the countries are elected on the basis of proportional representation. Now, you will ask that India does not have proportional representation, but still you have fair election. And I agree with that. You don't have that. In India, it's a federal state. You have provincial governments. So when you have provincial governments, there is real decentralization of power. And in India, the federal system is working very well, very effectively. A. And B, the people's trust, the public trust on the electoral process in India enjoys a very high degree of confidence among the voters. At the last election, perhaps, is a clear reflection of that. So we need to bring this kind of changes. Third thing, we might even consider, we should consider increase in the number of members of parliament. You see, in Bangladesh, when Bangladesh was born in 1971, in which India played a very crucial part towards the end, and we had a population of 75 million plus or minus, and we had 300 members of the parliament elected directly by the people. Now, in 2024, the population is 770 million plus minus. But we still have only 300 members. So I don't think there is a proper representation of 17 million people through 300 members of parliament only. I don't think we'll have the kind of representation that they want. So we should increase the number of members of parliament, at least double them, and to have a bigger representation of the people. See, let's take the example of the United Kingdom. Their population is 65 million, which is much, much less than Bangladesh. But they have 65 members of the House of Commons. 650 members of the House of Commons. So which shows that the House of Commons is much better represented. Representative in nature because they are answerable to a smaller group of people. Each member of parliament, which makes them much more effective. Then we should think of a bicameral legislature, like you have in India, like you have in Sri Lanka, like you have in the United Kingdom, in the United States, and every democratic country more or less have a bicameral legislature. So why shouldn't Bangladesh have a bicameral legislature? So when you have a bicameral legislature, the advantage is that you can elect some people not directly through vote, but through other measures, and then they can, so it gives you an option to choose people from outside political parties. I mean, India's current foreign minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, is not a member, he's a member of the party, but he's not a member of the Lok Sabha, he's a member of the Rajya Sabha. So that is a great advantage, and that is actually a very democratic form.
Understood.
Increasingly, with our population having risen to 170 million plus or minus, I think Bangladesh should start considering the question of provincial governments, like you have in India. Even Sri Lanka, with such a small population, much smaller than Bangladesh, a country much smaller than Bangladesh, have a provincial governments. Even though Sri Lanka went through a very bloody secessionist war for long 30 years, with great loss of life, and then also they had, in spite of all of that, the provincial governments, and at least two of the provinces are controlled by the Tamil majority population in those provinces. But that has ensured territorial integrity of Sri Lanka. It has not threatened Sri Lanka's territorial integrity in one sense. It has strengthened it. So these are reforms that this caretaker interim government should look at very seriously, and they should find ways around the existing constitution to incorporate this in the constitution, make amendments in the constitution. And this may take time. This will not happen in 3 months. This will take a long time to happen. So maybe 1 year, maybe more than 1 year. So I think they should be given then time to bring these fundamental reforms in our constitution. Now, the BNP, which is now very excited with the change of regime in Bangladesh, is calling for an early election, preferably within 3 months, because they believe that this will help them. And I guess it will. Awami League minus Sheikh Hasina may not be prepared well enough to go into an election within 3 months. So to go back to the sense of having an election in a level playing field, you must have these reforms, and then you must delay the election at least by a year, so that everybody can take part in the election. Otherwise, you don't have a participatory election. So we go back to the same thing.
Understood.
So I think these are the reforms Professor Yunus should address, and his colleagues in the interim government should address. The values of our war of liberation, which are very fundamental to the existence of Bangladesh. And I am a freedom fighter, and I'm a wounded freedom fighter. I revolted against the Pakistani government in 1971 and fought against them. And so I believe that if you go, we should not for a moment move away from the fundamental values of the war of liberation, which is democracy, accountability, and non-communalism.
Understood, sir. If I
So
could ask
these are
you,
the three basic elements of our war of liberation.
understood. And if I could,
The responsibility of the people, etc., etc.
understood, sir.
So let's wait and see how Professor Yunus, who is a very well-reputed person, known as a clean person, known as a commitment to democracy, should look at and should address.
Understood, sir. If I could ask you a question about what happens moving forward in terms of the political situation in the country, especially in the instability and violence that seems.
I can't hear you clearly. You're breaking up.
I see. Once again, if I could ask you about the political instability in particular parts of the country that has been getting some interest here in India, especially attacks against minorities, especially the Hindu minority. Do you think that is going to be a major challenge for the interim government helmed by Dr. Yunus in the coming period of time, by Mr. Yunus?
Indeed. We have seen violence, vandalism. Much of it is now reduced, but the fact remains that there is a segment of the people still don't feel secure. This habit of breaking down statues, including statues of the Bir Shreshthor, which is the highest gallantry award given to 7 people during the War of Liberation. I understand, don't have evidence in my hand right now. I understand that even their statues were vandalized obviously by forces opposed to the War of Liberation or who don't like the War of Liberation. So that is very disturbing. And I would expect, and in fact, as a freedom fighter, I would demand of Professor Yunus and his interim government to look at this very, very, very seriously. This is a new generation which has created this, not just an uprising, it's basically a revolution. And if the revolution should be aimed at making fundamental changes without shifting away from the basic values of our war of liberation, protection of every faith. I mean, they have all committed, the army chief has said that, the interim government has said that, Professor Yunus has repeatedly said that, even the BNP has said that. But this is an important issue that must be addressed. I mean, at the swearing-in ceremony today, a party that is not only not registered but also banned, which is a Jamaat Islami, was present at the swearing-in ceremony at the Bongo Bhavan, which is the highest seat of power in the country, which I find disturbing, frankly, and I'm being very candid here. There are very bright people in this interim government, very intelligent people. The youth has been represented, women have been represented. There are a number of minority members in the interim cabinet. 2 former diplomats. One is the former Foreign Secretary Tawhid Hussain. The other is the former Ambassador Supradeep Chakma, who comes from the Chittagong Hill Tracts, the Chakma tribe in the Chittagong Hill Tracts. So that is a very good. That is a good combination to have an inclusive interim administration. But for them, the challenge remains delivering on good governance, on accountability, creating a level playing field for the next election. And of course, the election commission has to be restructured. The present election commission, people don't have trust on the present election commission. I think the police force, which has now been totally, is absent on the street, they have to be brought in to maintain law and order, students are maintaining traffic, which is a, pleasant sight to see young students, standing out on the road trying to manage traffic. But they are not trained to do that. So we should get, they should go back to colleges and the universities. So we should get credible police force that enjoys the trust of the people, that are seen by the public as friend of the people. Unfortunately, over the last 5 to 10 years, public trust in the law enforcement agencies has been reduced to 0. And with the shooting and killing that went on during the protest, it has even sunk lower, even lower.
Understood.
The police were politicized, badly politicized, which should not have been the case. The professional people, the former Inspector General of Police, Benazir Ahmed, made tons and tons of money and he was allowed to leave the country in safety and security with the help of the government. So this all contributes to public trust being eroded in the law enforcement apparatus of the country.
Understood, sir. If I could ask you a question about the mood in the country at this point in time, and what happens moving forward from now. You, of course, laid out the kinds of reforms you think should happen. How long you think an interim government will last, elections, so on and so forth. Could I ask you a little bit about that? There is some concern sitting here in India, or New Delhi at least. There's a lot of commentary on what's happening in Bangladesh. And one side, of course, seems to be suggesting that this is a new movement. Students have been a major part of this political movement that has unseated Sheikh Hasina's government. These are people who are asking for a more democratic, more progressive country. But there are also, of course, skeptics who are arguing that, as you were mentioning, students have to go back to university, they have to go back to college. And then you are back to the same old parties, the same old BNP, the same old Jamaat, the organized political forces that have always been around in the form of the BNP, in the form of Islamist parties. Therefore, this is maybe, as some seem to be suggesting, a false dawn. Where do you personally see this falling? Do you think that this will be a new start for Bangladesh, or do you feel like the way the country's politics is structured currently, that organized political forces that already exist, the BNP, Islamist parties, will continue to hold sway?
You see, the BNP is not an Islamic party. BNP is a centrist party, centrist political party. It is a very large party. It enjoys great popularity. It has its forces, its voter bank has not shrunk, as I saw myself in the last election. The anti-incumbency factor in the public mind is very, very strong, and BNP will try to take full advantage of that. I would suggest that, commentators in India are making all sorts of comments. Some of them are valid and many of them are not. But I would feel, and as a friend of India, I would suggest that Indian government should seriously engage the new interim government in Bangladesh, very seriously. India should not freeze themselves out just because Sheikh Hasina is not there. They should engage not just with one political party or one particular individual, but with the people of Bangladesh. This is a fact raised by ordinary Bangladeshis, non-partisan. You see, even if Awami League and BNP have support of, say, total together, 50 to 60% of the people, there are still 40% who don't belong either to Awami League or to the BNP. So those people say, we are not engaged by India. Our concerns are not addressed by the governments of the day. So here in Bangladesh. So I think it is very important and will be well advised if the Indian government reaches out to the interim administration and share their points of view, because India, we are historically linked, we are geographically bonded together. India has a great interest in the stability of Bangladesh, in what kind of society we have in Bangladesh. You already have problems with Maldives, Sri Lanka, Nepal is going back and forth. Bhutan, I do not know what the situation is. So Bangladesh has to be your most trusted and reliable ally and neighbor. It's a country of 170 million people. And we have a strategic value, which is of India's interest. We have a geopolitical value, which is in Indian interest. And we have huge amount of connectivity going back and forth. Lakhs of Bangladeshis travel from Bangladesh to India. A lot of Indian people live in Bangladesh, 19,000 at the last count I heard. So this is something very, very important that India should do to engage the interim administration. I think it is in India's interest to engage them and express their views. I'm not saying express their concern, but express their views that it'll be good for Bangladesh to have a government that is not seen to be inimical to India's interest or Indian security. At the same time, relationship has to be based on mutual benefit, mutual respect, and issues like water sharing. This is burns the people of Bangladesh of the water sharing to common rivers. Many of the 54 rivers, all the 54 rivers are not Indian rivers; they're international rivers. There are international conventions on which sharing of water is determined. This should be addressed. The killing of Bangladeshis in the border. This is something that really hurts every Bangladeshi. You have border with Nepal, but you don't hear of Nepal is being killed by the BSF. Bhutan has a border with Bangladesh, with India. You don't hear Bhutan is being killed by the BSF. Why are Bangladeshis being killed? If there is a smuggling issue, illegal entry issue, there are laws to deal with them. You don't have to shoot them to death for whatever reason. So successive governments in India, starting from 2011, have committed to reducing the killings at the border to zero. But this has not happened. There have been reduction, but then they go up again and they come down again. Why should one single Bangladeshi be killed at the border, even if he has committed something illegal by going into India? He should be arrested and then deported. You don't share a land boundary with Sri Lanka, but you share a maritime boundary with Sri Lanka. And I was High Commissioner to Sri Lanka for 4 years. So I've seen things from the Sri Lankan side also. Their fishermen cross the maritime boundary and try to fish, and Indian government, Navy and whatever, arrests them. And then they send them back to Sri Lanka, and Sri Lanka does the same. No Sri Lankan fisherman is killed by the Sri Lankan Navy. Why does this happen in Bangladesh? So these are very important issues that I think India also needs. If I have always asked this question with my Indian friends, and I have so many of them, that in 1971, we shared shedding of blood. Why today we cannot share our water? This is a question that really boggles my mind. And as a very genuine and a committed friend of India and a patriot in Bangladesh who fought for his country, I think this issue needs to be addressed by India very seriously. India has to be our most important partner in terms of political relationship, in terms of geopolitical relationship, in terms of trade, investment, people-to-people contact. We are culturally similar in many ways, and this should be strengthened. And starting with the interim government, continued into the next government, whichever the government is. Unless, of course, it has people in the future government that are openly inimical to India's interest. That is something else. And we hope that will not happen. I certainly don't want to see that. But also I want to see that India looks at the interest of Bangladesh as well.
Understood, sir. So if I could ask you, are there any political forces that you believe, you talked about some of the commentary from India, are there any political forces in Bangladesh that you believe might be inimical to a stronger relationship between India and Bangladesh? You were referring to how you did not, you for example saw some political parties that are being mainstreamed that you would rather not see. And that has, I think, been part of the conversation here, which is simplistic as it may be. There is some conversation about how, as we were mentioning before, this idea of Islamist parties and so on and so forth that India has been suspicious of in the past. The sense is sometimes in India, or at least that has been the dominant conversation here, I'm just informing you of that, is of course that we were unable to get the kind of counterterrorism cooperation we would have liked in that period between 2001 and 2006, when the BNP and the Jamaat formed a coalition with each other. And there's this idea that you can't trust Islamist parties to work closely with India on key issues. So could I ask you a little bit about that? Are there political forces that are being mainstreamed in Bangladesh at this point in time that would not want a closer relationship with India or have a more distrustful view of India?
Well, you see, the fact remains that Jamaat-e-Islami, which in 1971 was openly and clearly against the liberation of Bangladesh breaking away from Pakistan. And they did it in a very bloody manner. They killed a lot of. So this is a new generation of people, young generation of people. I would like to believe that the younger generation, the youth of Bangladesh, do not believe in religious fundamentalism to be part of our body politic. I have great faith in them. I have great trust in them. I mean, they are religious, but not necessarily politically religious. The Bangladesh origin are not politically, should not be politically religious or religiously political. So those are the forces that I have some concerns with, not vis-a-vis India only, but even in my own country. And as I said, as a freedom fighter, I have serious issues with. But the sad thing is, the unfortunate and sad thing is that even the Awami League played, footsies with the Jamaat in 1994, 1995. They combined with Jamaat, had series of meetings with Jamaat, and all these evidences are still there. Sheikh Hasina herself meeting with Jamaat leaders to carry out a joint protest against the BNP elected government that was elected in 1991. So why should political parties like the Awami League should have even the minimum level of cooperation with the Jamaat? I mean, Jamaat was banned only very recently, a few days before Sheikh Hasina left. Why was Jamaat not banned 10 years ago when the Awami League first came to office? It's not even a registered party. The registration was cancelled by the Election Commission long time ago. So what stopped the Awami League from banning Jamaat? Were they playing a double game? This is a question that rides very deeply in the public mind. Was Awami League playing a double game here? Were they appeasing Jamaat in a different form? Even the Hifazat-e-Islam, which is a very radical political force, they're not a political party, they're a political force, and they're very large. Even Hifazat-e-Islam was, appeased by the Awami League in many forms, and the most graphic nature of that is the change in our school and college textbooks, where the Hifazat wanted some more religious elements to be included, had more communal attitude in the textbooks, and the Awami League, conceded. What was the necessity of doing that? When, this famous statue that you have in front of many courts in the world of a lady blindfold holding a scale to show that justice is blind. And when the statue was constructed, the Hifazat was very much against it. They wanted to break it down. And the Sheikh Hasina government relented to that. What they did, they took it not from the front of the court, but they took it to a different place where you can't see it anymore. So why the necessity? I mean, okay, there are demographic elements. 70%, 90% of the people in Bangladesh are Muslims, but 90% of Bangladesh people are not Muslims. I think a majority, overwhelming majority of the people of Bangladesh are non-radical. They don't believe in extremism. They don't believe in any form of radicalism. But it doesn't take a large number to create a problem. You don't have to have numerical strength as long as you have few committed people who can, cause damage. So I think there should be a national consensus among the major political parties of not allowing any form of religious parties in the body politic of Bangladesh. Understood. And that will also primarily serve upholding the values of the 1971 Liberation War. And I think that will also go a long way. Actually, the United States is very much supposed to be anti-extremism, anti-radical, religious radicalism. So that move should please our friends in the West, our friends in India, our friends in the South Asian nations. So I think these are the major issues we need to address. You see, we have a zero-sum game attitude in our politics, which has done Bangladesh enormous harm, enormous harm. The Awami League believe that we are the only ones who should run Bangladesh. The BNP thought when we are in power, we should do everything against the Awami League. Frankly, this disturbs me very much. Why should we have a zero-sum game? Politics is not about zero-sum game. Politics is about accommodating different views in a democratic system. And I think we should need to address.
Understood. So if I can ask you one final question, do you believe that there will be any change as the interim government takes charge, of course, with the backing of the armed forces. Do you think that there will be any change in the foreign relations of Bangladesh, or do you think that the interim government is going to really opt for stability in its approach to the world?
You see, the military cooperation between Bangladesh and India actually is at a very, very low scale. I mean, compared to our history of 1971, it is at a very, very low scale. Recently, the Indian government and the former Bangladesh government agreed the joint statement, which I thought was a visionary statement, to increase, greatly our defense cooperation, including training, procurement, more joint exercises, more information sharing, etc., etc. So this should continue. This should definitely continue. We have a large army, a very professional army, and it is an establishment. The armed forces, Army, Navy, Air Force, enjoys great respect among the trust among the people, basically. So I think India should engage all segments of the Bangladesh, in establishments, whether it is the military, the civil, the politician, the civil society, etc. So this is, I think, very, very important for India to do.
And so, if I may also ask, in terms of what moves forward now with the person who is, of course, attracted the most attention in terms of Prime Minister Sheikh, his former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, the fate of her Awami League party. Could you tell us a little bit about how are people seeing Sheikh Hasina at this point in time? Do you think that, of course, it's never wise to call time on anyone's political career, especially in South Asia. But do you believe that it's time for her to hang up her boots politically? What is the future of her Awami League party moving forward in Bangladesh?
You see, the Awami League is the oldest political party in Bangladesh. It's also one of the two largest political parties in Bangladesh. And whether it is the end of the political career of Sheikh Hasina or not, that is for her to decide. It's not for me to comment on that. The decision lies entirely with her and the party. But both the Awami League and the BNP, I think, should learn to grow out of family inherited leadership. I mean, it's unthinkable that a party like the Awami League cannot find proper alternative leadership to the Sheikh family. I'm sure they can. It's such a large party. And the same goes with the BNP. Why does it leader have to be through the system of inheritance? One can also ask that, okay, the Congress party in India is the same thing. But look at how the Congress party behaved this time in the last election, how much it changed its ways. It took politics, by the horn and regained a lot of public trust and confidence as was evident in the last election. So both the parties should look beyond family leadership. And Sheikh Hasina has been prime minister for 15 years at a stretch, and then 5 years before that, so makes it 20. She has played her innings. If she wants to leave now, that is her choice. If she thinks that she should still control the party, that is also her choice. But in the interest of the party, I think she should be able to create a proper succession, leadership succession in the party.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Shamsher Chowdhury, for joining us, for laying out what is happening in Bangladesh at this point in time, the reforms that the Yunus-led interim government must now consider, as well as the current state of politics in the country, which political players are currently in power, as well as the future prospects of the Awami League, as well as former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Thank you so much, Ambassador, for joining us. And thank you, dear viewers, for joining India Today Global as we cover the latest out of Bangladesh.